Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I am Pat Escate, and I am the organizer of Ann Lister Birthday Weekend, which was ALBW, that's our promo, which sadly was canceled due to the coronavirus, and much like most of our lives. But through the wonders of technology and through the fabulous efforts of my tech team, Steph Galloway and Livia Labate, we are actually coming to you live. And this morning, we're starting off our day's work with Angela Clare. Angela is the collection manager from Calderdale Museum Services, and part of her responsibilities is Shibden Hall. So Angela's going to be talking to us about Shibden Hall today. Angela, great to see you. How are you?
Hi, I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here, so I'm ready for my tea and going to
bed. Oh, nice for you. Well, do stay up and listen to us talk with Saran and Sally, though, later on this afternoon. So why don't we start out talking a little bit about, because we're doing Ann Lister Birthday Weekend with this, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the birthday celebrations that you started a couple of years ago, kind of kicking off the whole Ann Lister birthday.
Yeah, so I think Ann Lister's birthday has always been quite noted at Shibden Hall. We've always had various talks and tours, and I think 2018 was kind of the first sort of big one when people already knew that there was going to be a TV series. So for that year in 2018, we managed to book Sally Wainwright and Anne Troma, and also Helena Whitbread, and they were all there to talk about Anne's birthday and this mythical TV series that didn't yet exist. So at the time, though, anyone who's been to Shibden knows we don't have a great deal of space for events. So we sold all 35 seats quite quickly, and we had a waiting list of a few more. But obviously this is very much before any of the real big press kind of came out, and obviously pre-Gentleman Jack. So we had a lovely event and day, and we had birthday cake, and yeah, so it was all quite exciting at that stage. We hadn't even filmed or anything then. So, and then 2019, obviously in 2018, we were a film set and all the filming took place, and we were still waiting to see what it was going to be like. So in April 2019, that was when we had Helena and Jill both in the barn at Shibden, so we could fit more people in. But if anybody was there, it was freezing, absolutely freezing. So we won't do that again. So we all froze to death whilst listening to Jill and Helena, who were fantastic. And we also unveiled the blue plaque at Shibden to Ann Lister as well last year. So that was fab. And then this TV series came out. And so for 2020, suddenly the escalation was huge, and thousands of people wanted to come from all around the world. So we'd had a festival in, I think it was June, July, the year before. So that marked the end of the TV series, and that was inundated with people. We had people queuing all around the gardens to get in. So that gave us an idea of what to expect. However, obviously, everything is now postponed. So, but it's wonderful that everybody's moved online, and there's a lot still happening. And I guess this brings people together even more, I suppose. So it's postponed, so it will happen. I don't know when, but we are looking forward to it, and we were very excited, and it is quite sad.
There were, I know there were a lot of really interesting things planned at the hall for this weekend. You would have had cake and candles last night.
Of course.
Right. And then today would have been a craft fair, correct?
Yeah. So we had a few things. Again, as I say, the hall itself is quite small. So the biggest spaces we have are either freezing cold, or we can fit about 30 people in. So we booked Helena to talk yesterday on Anne's birthday. She was going to speak at Bankfield, our sister site, which is much bigger. And then we were going to go over to Shibden and do book signings and have tea and cake. And we were going to stay open late last night so that people could come after work and visit and kind of pay their respects, as it were. But yes, that hasn't happened. But yeah, we were going to have a craft fair around the grounds. And it would have been the perfect weather as well, because it's quite nice.
Right.
So yeah, but it will all happen at some point. It's probably best if we do it in summer, because we might get some more sunshine and be less washed out. So there was events at the Peace Hall, Central Library, at the Halifax Minster. Sally and Anne were booked, but I know that you've scooped them after this, so
Yes,
you get
yes.
to hear from Sally. Yeah.
Exactly. But so in place of that, because we weren't able to have Shibden Hall open now, you've actually recorded something for the birthday, and it includes some of the entries from Anne's diaries over the years. So we'd like, we're going to go ahead and roll that now,
Okay.
and then we'll be back.
Hello from Shibden Hall. I'm Angela and I'm here at Shibden Hall, as you can see in the background, and I'm the only one, which is rather sad really. We had got lots of things planned for today, tomorrow and the whole week, all celebrating Anne Lister's birthday. So obviously in Anne Lister's time, imagine there are no houses and there probably wasn't a rainbow flag either. It would be so different if we could be here. I imagine there would be a queue around the garden already, people dressed up, lots of Anne Listers, a few Anne Walkers as well, and lots of tea and cake. We were going to have lots of cake and balloons and all kinds of stuff. So it's postponed, it's not cancelled, and if nothing else, we'll definitely be back here in April 2021. So we shall return, and it's really nice in a way to see such solidarity of people realising why we can't be here and sharing things online and sharing support for each other and lots of information and research and things as well. So what I wanted to share with you today is some extracts from Anne Lister's diaries. Now these are currently being transcribed by West Yorkshire Archive, who are doing a big project to get them transcribed. I think they're about halfway through now. Transcribing is a lot of work. There's 5 million words estimated at the moment, and a lot of it is in code, which takes another layer of difficulty onto it. So what I asked for a few days ago, and the Anne Lister code breaking team obliged, was the entries for her birthday, which I thought would be a lovely thing to share, and also highlight what we're doing here today, which is celebrating Anne Lister's 229th birthday. Whether or not she wants us to share her diaries is a whole nother topic, so we won't go into that. But for now, I just thought I'd read a few little extracts. So, well, I've got 12,000 words. So I'm not going to read all of them because you'll get sick of hearing me. But I've been through and highlighted them, and I realise I've actually highlighted loads. So I'm probably not going to be able to read all of them. But I just wanted to share a little bit. Her diaries, picking out one day a year for her diaries is quite interesting because it shows lots of key things that happened to her and how her life changed over time, and also things that stayed the same, namely her wanting to find somebody to love and live with here at Shibden Hall. The diaries bring us quite close to Anne. She records everything in minute detail. But I like mostly being at the hall. I'm very lucky to work here. I get to spend a lot of time here, and I walk my dog pretty much every day in the grounds as well. So Shibden Hall and Park means a lot to me, and it's thanks to Anne Lister that it's still here today, 200 years on. So 3rd of April 1820, this is where it starts to get a little bit more saucy. So she says, a good kiss. By kiss, I think she means having sex. Good kiss, but rather long last night, talking about Miss Valence, etc. But she's talking about her, but she's with Mariana. Mariana said very sweetly, and with tears at the bare thought, she could never bear me to do anything wrong with Miss Valence, or anyone in my own rank of life. She could bear it better with an inferior, where the danger of her being supplanted could not be so great. So you can have a servant, but not somebody of our class. And Anne comments, I never before believed she loved me so dearly and fondly. Now, for those who know about Anne Lister, this is really quite poignant because this is her with Mariana, who I think was the love of her life. Unfortunately, Mariana married a man, Charles Lawton, who never died. The plan, I think, was to have his money and then him die, and then the two women could be together. But it wasn't to be. And Mariana, though, stays in her life throughout. Some of the later extracts, Mariana crops up quite regularly. 1832, very fine sunny morning and Fahrenheit 60, nice and warm. Miss Hobart gave me a little lock of her hair. Very good friend, cheerful and proper. She would not have me change. Very odd, but should not like me otherwise. I never said it was my birthday. Later on, though, they're out and about. Very cheerful but proper. Told her this was my birthday, and I was 40 years. Hers is the 24th of January, and she was 29. Bit younger than Anne. Very fine day, Fahrenheit 63 at the end of the day. Nice and warm. 3rd of April 1833. Damp, wet, small raining morning and Fahrenheit 53. And written in code, This is my 42nd birthday, and I am more single than ever, unaccompanied and alone. Well, Providence orders all for the best. I am rather straitened in money matters and obliged to borrow a few hundreds. I repent my subscription of yesterday to the building the new museum. I must be thrifty. Yet still I feel happier than this time last year. I am more resigned and reconciled to all things, more sensible of the many blessings that attend me. I am in stronger health and vigour of mind again. Oh, Anne, she's by herself. You know what that feels like. 3rd of April 1834. Rain in the night and had a little this morning, getting up to Fahrenheit 52 degrees. She has some visits with other families this day, the Norcliffes, and she takes Anne Walker with her. The Norcliffe, Charlotte Norcliffe, comments, though, that she was crazy. Later on, Anne is with Charlotte privately, and she explained, explained and said, I thought of settling with Miss Walker. Charlotte thought I had better not determine too soon, but take time to let it amalgamate gradually. I said it had already been amalgamated the last 18 months, and I thought that long enough. And then Charlotte says she had no idea I knew Miss Walker so intimately, or would not have said what she did about her earlier. So she wouldn't have said she was crazy if she knew that Anne Lister was courting her. Charlotte said she understood Miss W had 1,500 a year. Yes, said I calmly, she has. And then she finishes with, found Miss W asleep, but she roused up and we had a good long talk. Very fine day. So that was a few extracts, which gives you an idea of the kinds of things that she got up to. I'm next going to be talking with Pat about all things Anne Lister and Shibden Hall.
We are back. That was really wonderful. I obviously got a chance to look at it earlier this morning, and what an amazing amount of work that must have taken to do all of the recording of those, because we only ran 3 of your clips.
Yeah, so I recorded about 25 minutes or so yesterday. But no, it was a pleasure to do. So thank you to the Anne Lister Codebreakers who provided the transcriptions, and they're all available to read on Shibden Hall's website. So and that's every birthday entry from 1818 to 1840. And I was going to read them out because very naively I thought, oh, they won't be very long, but 12,000 words worth. So typical Anne.
Wow.
And they get longer and longer. The last couple of entries are a couple of pages worth. So I went through and just sort of highlighted the bits that I thought were most it just kind of jumped out. Right. But obviously what you've just seen then, that was even more edited down from what I've recorded. So I do hope to record them at some point, but it's quite an undertaking because it's going to be a few hours worth of reading.
It'll be a wonderful thing to have on the website, though, and certainly good promotional material for the hall, which we love to see it occupied. We love to see people coming there. The best way to possibly support it is to come and pay for your ticket. Before we go any further, though, I did want to bring up a couple of things about you, Angela Clare.
Okay.
First of all, I see a painting in the background there. And many of our viewers may not know that you are not only the collections manager for Calderdale Museum Services, you are also an author. And you happen to be the author of The Moss House under the name Clara Barley. So I do want people to make note of that. It's a wonderful book.
Thank you.
Moving on. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is that you actually got a chance to be in Gentleman Jack as Mrs. Watson, correct?
Yes. So yeah, this is where all my background has kind of come up to haunt me, really. Obviously, I work in museums and I'm responsible for collections, which means sharing the stories and also their preservation and loans and inquiries and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I started out as an actor and a writer, and I think everything I've done has been about sort of sharing stories through sort of theatre, short films, exhibitions, and then yeah, so I kind of wanted to tell Anne's story in my own way,
Yes.
and knowing how long it was going to take to get the full transcripts available to read, and even then you're talking 5 million words, that's what, 25 plus books to read.
Yes. Yes.
So I kind of thought, this would make a really good novel. So I
Yes.
wrote that quite a few years ago, and then obviously along came Sally and was like, "Oh, I'm going to do this TV series." So I thought I should probably dig it out,
Right.
and get that out there. So yeah, so it's worked out kind of really well. And then because of my acting background, obviously meeting Sally, we got talking, and so I sent her a short film that I'd written more as a writer, but I was in it as well. And so so I got to audition, and I was Mrs. Watson very briefly.
How wonderful is that?
Yeah, it feels very serendipity, you know, when everything kind of comes together, because it's kind of combined all my interest in sort of women's history and, you know, underknown women, and how we can share their stories through various formats.
Wonderful.
Sort of through the hall itself, and then I put together the strategically positioned and lister intro guide as well for work. So that's the sort of the factual side of things, which is why
Wonderful.
I put under a different name, just to sort of clarify that this wasn't a biography. This was just me.
Right. That's fantastic. You know, I want to get into asking you some questions about Shibden Hall. Before I do that, though, since we're on the subject of the Show Me Air, does anyone actually know where that was located on the grounds?
Roughly, we think it was down by the lake. There's a toilet block there now, which and next to, there's a little kids park and some toilets. So we think it was there by the lake. It's quite woody. When they came to film, they built one. I wasn't sure whether it was going to be a feature, but yeah, they built it in the slightly woody area. People have seen that in the TV series, so a bit different to the one that I envisioned. But I liked that kind of hung my story together, because it's something that we don't really know much about. Obviously, there's references to her building, her chaumière, or the shed, as Marion called it.
The shed.
But for me, that meant that was a room of one's own. That was that private place where you could actually be yourself. Because even at Shibden, it was her house eventually, but she lived, you know, for most of the time with her dad, her aunt, her sister, her servants. Whereas creating this small little building, where it was just the two of you, but the fact that it's gone is interesting, and we don't know why.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about the hall itself. Your office is in the hall, so you get to be there every single day. Do you? I have to say that reading the diaries and looking at Shibden Hall online, even, you know, looking at it in a video is one thing, but actually being in the hall is a completely different thing, isn't it? That energy that's in there.
Yeah, totally. I think the diaries bring you close to sort of Anne and what she was doing. They're quite sort of functional, aren't they? Sort of this account. Whereas to me, just being in somebody's house, I think that's why literary houses are so popular. Like we've got the Bronte Parsonage just up the road in Haworth, and there's something about being where somebody lived and slept and had their emotions and lost people. It was interesting recording there yesterday, reading the entry where her dad dies, and he died in that house, which I'm stood outside of. So yeah, I think it really brings you close. It's unfortunate that we don't have more collections that belong to Anne. We have very few things, but at least we have portraits. And then you've got a lot of Anne's influences. You can see throughout the hall the things that she did. And when you're in Shibden Park, you know, she built the lake and the waterfall and the gatehouse. All of it is Anne. There's this 6-foot stone lion that greets you. That was Anne. She chose that and put it there. And those things tell us as much about somebody as 5 million words of their day-to-day activities do. I think that legacy that's left, and her choices that she made and things that she liked, and yeah, just, you know, build yourself a lake.
Yeah, so sort of what she wanted to be seen and what she didn't want to be seen. And to that point, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this too. Do you think that Anne Lister would have liked to have had her diaries made so public?
Probably not. I wouldn't want mine. I've looked back at some of my stuff when I was a teenager, and I'd know.
Right.
I don't think so. I think for her, I mean, the references that she makes to her diaries are very much, I shall look back on this, or it serves as a reminder, and I will learn from it. But I don't know, and you'll have to check with Helena and Jill, that have read all of them, that she ever says about publishing them. I find it interesting that she left the travel notes. So again, another couple of million words of travel writing, And those books, they're often crossed through, which suggests she may have written them up somewhere else. And the travel notes, again, there's some duplication between the diaries and the travel notes. So the travel notes to me seem to be what she was more willing to share.
Right.
And then even the voice, if you look at her letters, there's a different voice again to her diaries. You know, it's what you want, you say to people, but what you versus what you think.
Right, exactly, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And,
I don't think you'd be too pleased, but I think now the reaction to them has become such a positive, and
yes.
people can relate to her and empathize with her, and she's inspiring people today, 200 years on, to be themselves and love who they want to love.
Yes.
I think that outweighs the embarrassment she would probably feel about us knowing about her going to the toilet and things,
yes.
and diseases.
Yes, right. And all the rest of that minute detail that could be a little embarrassing. So back at Shibden Hall, I have to say that what really struck me about being in the house, you do feel, I felt Ann Lister, but where I really felt her was in the great room, where when you walk in and you look up at the beam that runs across the wall just in front of the staircase, there's the family motto. But even more importantly, on either side, she's left a pretty large A and a pretty large L on the other side. And you don't see that from any of the other tenants of Shibden Hall, do you? There really isn't any other mark like that in there.
Well, I think everybody that lived there has left their mark, and it's actually Shibden Hall's 600-year anniversary this year and next. It was first recorded in 1420/21. So this year we're doing research, and then next year we're going to have a big exhibition at Shibden and at Bankfield. And great. So we're looking into all the residents. So the history of the building is very interesting. Everybody left their mark in a way, but what Anne did was really transformative. She's, you know, most of it, the big things are Anne. You know, she added a wing to either end of the entire building. So yeah, I think she's kind of everywhere. I think that's what's quite nice, although we don't have any, you know, personal possessions as such, or no clothing or anything. Right. The fact that she's everywhere, and like you say, the staircase is fab, and she had the really ornate, twisted balustrades and things, you know, and these are like the most expensive you could get. I love her spending money on it. Yes. And then you've also got the Lister Lion at the bottom of the stairs as well, and that was her kind of creation. She wanted that emblem that meant the Lister family and the Lister heritage that she was part of, which is really cool.
Do we know anything about the women? The statues of the women, or are they just sort of Greek references?
I don't know anything. I've not come across anything, so we'll have to dig further. But yeah, I'm not sure who they are really. I think there's a man and a woman and the lion. Yes. So there'll be something very clever.
Yes, there'll be something in it somewhere.
Like, yeah, she would definitely have like a very strong reason for them. So yeah, I need to do some digging and find out.
Let's move as far as things that are in Shibden and what you may or may not have in the collection. When we go into the library at Shibden Hall, not the one that's in the tower, but the other library, it's filled with books. I do know that most of Anne's books were auctioned off at some point after she left. We don't exactly know who by, but were you able to find any of Anne's books in there? Did somebody go through all of those?
Yeah, I did. No, they've been looked through a few times, and more recently we did redisplay the cases in the study because they've been used for filming and we'd had to move a lot of stuff. It was a good opportunity to search through. So out of all the books, we have half a dozen which seem to have Anne's signature. They're of the right period and it looks very much like her name. We have 2 music books that were definitely hers. Wow. And we know what her signature looks like in those. But yeah, we have found a few others. And in the study library, there's 3 big cabinets. The one in the middle, we have all of those have got Lister or people that have lived in the house, like the Oates, Waterhouse, Savills. They've got their names in. So they're all ones that belong to Shibden Hall. Anne would have had a huge library. They were originally in the corridor as you head down to her sort of study and bedroom. And then obviously she built the tower to put the library into. So she would have had thousands of books. And again, once their diaries were transcribed, I'm hoping somebody will pull out all the book references, and then we can have a full list of everything that she owned and bought and would have had.
Right.
And because she's so meticulous, chances are she signed and dated them all. So somewhere in the country is probably a library filled with Anne Lister signed books. But hopefully they'll turn up, and hopefully they'll find their way back to Shibden. But the last two occupiers, Dr. John Lister and then his son John Lister, everybody's called John and Anne, just to help. They were both collectors and scholars, and they both collected a lot more books as well. So yeah, so we've got a little bit of hers, but not a lot.
Wouldn't it be grand when the second season comes out? It could be an interesting promo to film something that asks the owners of some of the great houses in Great Britain to go to look through their libraries and see if they were any of the people that wound up with the books. That could be a really interesting little sort of, come on to season 2. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about that comes up pretty often is that etching in the glass where supposedly Anne engraved her signature on the glass. Can you explain that for us, please?
To be honest, we don't think it's Anne at all. It's not really like her signature, and she wouldn't. Would you scratch your window in your own house? Probably not.
No.
So no, we think that was much later. There was obviously the last A Lister was there, but it looks like it just says Lister. So it could be anybody or anybody that worked there. Again, it's been a museum for a long time, and there's been various people living there looking after the hall, and also visitors who can be quite pesky and try and get behind barriers and touch things and move things. So I don't know the definitive answer, but I really do not think that that's Anne's, I'm afraid.
Right, understood. Before I go any further, I did want to give a shout out to the staff that works at Shibden Hall. I've had the opportunity to be in there several times. The first 2 times that I went in, I was led through by your guide, Nancy, who I absolutely adore. And I just wanted to say hi to her in case she happens to be watching. So let's talk a little bit about, coming off the questions about the improvements. Much of what we see in Gentleman Jack when we're looking at Shibden Hall was actually done either during Anne Walker's time there or after Anne was dead. Yes, no?
Sorry, so
the improvements, when we see Shibden Hall in Gentleman Jack, we aren't actually seeing the Shibden Hall of Anne Lister's day.
Oh, sorry, truth versus reality. Yeah, so basically, obviously Sally was really keen to film at Shibden. But when Anne returned and when the TV series is set in 1832, it wasn't as big as it was, and a lot of things that were there weren't there. So obviously they were thinking, do we green screen it? Do we create another version of it? But in the end, I think the main thing was that Sally wanted to film on site, so that took precedence. So yeah, for the sticklers, they might go, that towel wasn't added until 1839.
Right.
But the main thing is it's the home. The main scenes that you see are in the house body and the dining room, which are probably as they would have been. So there's not too much difference on that bit, but externally, what you see would have been a bit different. But they're trying, I think you just have to let it go.
Right.
So that's fiction. It's, it's based on a wonderful true story. But we can't recreate it as it was before. Otherwise, you'd have to chop half the building off.
Right.
So yeah, you just go with it. Just go with it.
Right. So during Anne Walker's time, of course, one of the most significant events that supposedly happened there was the people showing up, Captain Sutherland, etc., trapping Anne Walker in the Red Room and lifting the door off the hinges. But we're hearing, there's new research on this now, and we're hearing a slightly different story. What's your take on that?
Well, anything post Anne Lister, obviously Anne Lister recorded everything up until a couple of weeks before she died. So then we go to having very little, and there's kind of a few reports and this and that, and also history is always written by the winners. So Captain Sutherland obviously wanted rid of her. So of course he's going to let everybody know that she was definitely insane, and to, you know, to reinforce his reason for kicking her out. So you can't really, it's hard to know exactly how things panned out. She was writing pretty coherent letters protesting against the railway that was going to cut through her land and Anne Lister's land. And so she, you know, she hadn't fallen apart traveling back with the body from Georgia. She seemed of sound mind. But then since she was 17, she'd had, you know, mental health issues and struggled. So, and Anne in her diaries talks about a lot of that as well. So, you know, she was a vulnerable person. And Sutherland, again, there's more research to be done, but why on earth he was wanting to move in without his family and just live there by himself. And also he was married to Anne's sister Elizabeth, so he owned half the Walker estate. Why on earth he was faffing about trying to get hold of the Shibden estate is, again, difficult. And Anne Walker was, you know, fully in control of it it was a few years before she was kicked out. And then with Dr. Belcombe, he was her doctor, and he happened to work in York at the asylum. So again, she was taken to see him, and interred. But again, I don't know how long for yet. I need to find out more about it. So there's lots of things about it that we don't really know. And then obviously stories escalate over the years. And so it became this dramatic dragging her, kicking and screaming from Shibden and all this, which it might have been, but we don't really know. So there's more digging to be done. So if people know things about that, please share it with us at Shibden Hall, because there's more to be found out, I'm sure. But I tend to approach things as a historian. I don't trust anything until I can be guaranteed that the source is sound. And then also you've got to think why they're writing. I mean, even Anne's diaries, we are assuming she wrote down every single thing, but you know, there's probably still some gaps that she doesn't talk about or mention. You know, we can't assume that every single thing that happened to her and every single thing that she felt is recorded in those diaries. And I guess just throwing that out there.
Yes, and back as far as Captain Sutherland is concerned, why don't we talk about that for just a second? Because many of the people that are watching today may not realize that after Anne Walker was forcibly removed, or not, because we don't know, as you say, from Shibden Hall, Captain Sutherland did move in there, and he took over the property. He really had no legal right to do so. As long as Anne Walker was still alive, she still had the life interest in it. It had nothing to do with Captain Sutherland, but move in he did, and he actually died there, didn't he?
Yeah, he died there, and then it was rented out to various tenants. So this is the time when a lot of personal possessions and things were probably gotten rid of. Just because you wouldn't want, you know, if you moved into a house or rented a house, you're not going to leave somebody else's clothes in the wardrobe. You just wouldn't. And even if it seemed like Anne Walker wasn't going to be returning anytime soon, and the tenants would probably have quite a free reign to make the house their own. So that happened until she died, which was 1854. So quite a long time later. So you've got sort of, you know, sort of 10 plus years of tenants and Captain Sutherland living in there. And then it reverted back in Anne Lister's original will. When Anne Walker died, it reverted back to the Lister family. And that was a distant relative from a few generations back. So distant cousins who were Dr. John Lister and his wife Louisa and their 3 children, John, Charles and Anne. So that family moved in, but they were living between here and Wales, so they weren't at Shibden all the time. But Dr. John Lister died quite young, so his son John inherited aged just 20. Oh wow! And he then lived there with his sister Anne, but they never married, and he ran out of money. So by the end of the day, he had nothing left. So a friend of theirs bought Shibden and the estate, and they gave it to the Halifax Corporation. So John and Anne lived there until they died. So what you have then is quite an eclectic period from Anne's death to Anne Walker's death to, you know, you've got 2 more generations of people living there.
Right.
So yes, if things will get moved around, things will get changed, new things will be purchased. So when it comes to showing it as a museum, you know, there's certain things that we are quite confident have been there since Anne Lister's time, but there are other things that may well have been acquired, things that would have been sold or exchanged or broken and gotten rid of. So, but
Well,
it's interesting.
You gave me an example the other day, Anne's portable writing desk that's now in the glass case.
Yeah, so the few things that we have of Anne's, again, we have 2 music books and half a dozen other little books. And then we have the family portrait, but we also have a travel case which belonged to Anne Lister. Well, it says Anne Lister of Shibden Hall on the lid. It was came up for auction over in France. So again, it must have been given as a gift to somebody else. The Anne Lister of Shibden Hall on the lid is slightly scratched out, suggesting that somebody else used it afterwards. It's of the right period to be hers, and it's got a writing slope in it, so it would be really nice to think that this is what she travelled with and wrote those diaries and travel notes on. Yes. There were a few Annes of Shibden Hall, her aunt as well. So yeah, we think it was Anne Lister's, and we hope that that's a nice possession that we have that's always on display. So everything that we have directly to do with Anne, which is only half a dozen things, they're always on permanent display at the hall. We're not hiding anything, I'm afraid. There's nothing hidden. We've been through all the cupboards. There's nothing that's else that's relevant, really. Otherwise it would be on display. So
there's something in the display case upstairs in the hallway that was her library before she built the library that I really have been curious about. It's kind of in the back corner on either the first or second shelf, and it looks like almost like a tree stump with her. What is that? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so that's basically, it's a slipware pot. It's they were made locally. We've got loads of it in the museum collection, and this one says Anne Lister of Shibden Hall. Again, date-wise, not being an expert on this kind of ceramics, it could be Aunt Anne, it could be Anne Lister's, or it could be the last Anne Lister of Shibden Hall. So when you've got 3 of them, it's always a bit harder to tell. But again, it's in the case, it's on display, it's something definitely that's Lister-based. So with all the things, you have to question how confident are we that this was hers. I mean, to be honest, it's pretty ugly. I wouldn't have thought it would be something that Anne would go, oh, this is amazing. You know, I don't think it would be like in the middle centerpiece of the table. There's much more finer things at Shibden than this pot, but it's got Anne Lister of Shibden Hall engraved on the front of it. So
right, and right across the hall from that is the hatchment from, and you do know pretty much for a fact that that is Anne Lister's, right? By the shape, it's a female hatchment.
Yeah, we know that these are Lister's because the last resident, John Lister, he acquired these from Halifax Parish Church, now Halifax Minster. He got them, and they were very well provenanced as being from the Lister family at Shibden Hall. And then looking at it, it's got the Lister family crest, and it's also got a red triangle. So, and that apparently means a female, a spinster.
Right.
We actually have 3 of them. The one that we believe is Anne's is glazed and is quite good condition. But the other 2, they were just stored in the back of the church or in the basement somewhere. So the other 2, we believe they're of her father and her aunt, who both died in 1836. So we believe that they are theirs, just from one of them slightly more military, and the other one has another red triangle. So again, that was probably Aunt Anne, we think. But they're in really poor condition, so they're just being looked after in the store, that we can't display them. The paint is just all crumbling off. I mean, yeah, they're just being looked after. But the one of Anne's is pretty good nick. So that's always been on permanent display. So these were what you hung outside the house on the gate to let people know that somebody had died, and you'd hang them outside for about a year. And these 3 ended up at the church. Obviously, that's where the Listers were all buried. So yeah, but John Lister, he documents recovering them from the church, and he says who they were. And he researched the entire Lister family. You know, he knew more than anybody else about the Lister family.
Did he write it down? Did he write all that down?
So John Lister, the last resident of Shibden Hall, last owner of Shibden Hall, he was a historian. He's the one, he published about, was it 250,000 words of Anne's diaries in the local newspaper.
Yes.
So he's the one, he did a lot of research. He wrote several articles about Shibden, about the Lister family. He was really interested in his ancestry. It's very similarly to how Anne was as well. So what he's left is a lot of information. But he was a bit of a hoarder. So when he died and the team from Halifax Corporation, as it was then, went in, apparently there was just stuff everywhere, papers piled floor to ceiling. So the Shibden archive is vast. And as I mentioned, it's the Shibden 600 anniversary this year and next. So in a dream job, I would have had 5 years off to prepare for that and read all this stuff.
Right.
So yeah, so we're going to be digging into the archives as much as we can. And the first port of call, and I've actually got the copies at home with me to read again, are John Lister's articles. So I'm going to start with what he wrote and what he shared, and then see what else we can find out. So there's lots of research to be done.
Right.
And I'm sure there's more to be found out.
We're going to be moving into our Q&A time pretty shortly, but I also understand that you've done a whole lot of sprucing up at Shibden Hall. I heard is the garden back in shape over in Country Wood and the waterfall's running?
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of rain, so the waterfall is definitely running. I was there yesterday. It's a bit muddy. Our dog just jumped straight in and got stuck. So yeah, but no, I think so. Back to what you mentioned earlier about the team at Shibden. Obviously, it's no way just me. I'm a very small part of. I'm just one of the cogs in the machine at Shibden Hall. So yeah, we're part of Calderdale Council. So the building is looked after by the council's buildings team. The parks are looked after by the parks team. And then obviously within museums, we have our own team, and we look after 4 different sites and 2 large off-site stores as well. So Shibden's just a small part of what I get to do, but it's the bit that I do kind of love the most. So yeah, and the staff there have just been amazing. I mean, obviously we've gone within sort of 4 years from being quite a small, locally known site with visitors kind of pootling through, and obviously we've always told people about Anne Lister. Most of our room stewards and volunteers have always been so keen to tell the story of Anne Lister, especially, again, you mentioned Nancy, who's been with us for a long time, and she's the first person to want to shout about Anne Lister. So we've always relied on having such a good team, and then the role has really changed because suddenly we were a film set for several months, so our front house staff were then having to be on a film set and monitoring all of that, which was a very different thing. And then we were just packed full of visitors. So again, you're then having to deal with a huge surge in people. And also the change goes from people coming because they happen across, they happen to be visiting the area, or they just happen across Anne Lister and sort of, oh, well, let's go and have a look. Now we've got visitors who've spent, years and way more time than we have telling us about things. So it's fantastic at how it's changed. But yeah, everybody's just been so on board, and we're a small team really, so we do a lot of things ourselves. So it's been all hands on deck. We were only closed for January and February this year, and we're getting new boilers fixed and everything else. So we've changed around the rooms, moved the shop, been decorating, deep cleaning, and that's all the same staff who do that as you'll meet when you come and visit.
Well done.
Yeah, fantastic team.
So we're going to move to Q&A right now, but I do just want to make one last little comment, and that is one of the things that visitors will see when especially if they use one of the docents to take you through. You don't have to use a guide in Shibden Hall, but if you don't, you're really missing out on some really important things. So keep that in mind when you go to visit. Please take advantage of those wonderful guides. And one of the things that I've found it really has made me wonder, the king and queen actually visited Shibden Hall back in the 30s, I believe. And can you imagine how excited Anne Lister would have been to know about that?
She would have been so excited by that.
Over the moon.
Yeah.
So our first question.
Yeah.
Our first question is from Kaylee Haymans. What are some big and small ways your job has changed since the success of the show and the heightened interest in Anne, Shibden Hall, and Halifax?
So good question. So I started in this role 4 or 5 years ago now. So interestingly, I'd done my master's in gender studies and not heard of Anne Lister. So when I arrived and inherited this job and these collections and these sites to basically share their stories, I was fascinated to hear about her. And so straight away I was like, what can we do? But we are a small team with limited budget, but we had various pots of funding. So one of the first things we did was add more interpretation to the hall. We did a film interview with Helena, which we've been sharing recently back in 2016. We did a new Visit Shibden film to promote the site. So we've been trying to do what we can steadily away over the years. And I've been up and down the country giving talks about Anne Lister as well. We put together a new guidebook and a new Anne Lister book. And yeah, just really kind of trying to do what we can to enhance that visitor experience. And then obviously we worked on a film set for quite a few months. And then we're kind of just riding the wave of this and making sure that people that come get to see the real Anne Lister. So yeah, my job's changed. I mean, when I started, I was like, right, how do I do this? How do I share this story? So when I was in the kitchen with Sally and she mentioned that she might do a TV series about Saran, I kind of like bit her head up and said, yes, do it. Because I just knew, what better way to share a story than on national television, and in fact, international television. So yeah, as soon as we knew that this was happening, we were so
Angela, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry for our audience. Angela and I are on a little bit of a lag, so we're really not trying to talk over one another, but it does happen. Did you expect the numbers of people to jump as they did, even from knowing that Sally had a series coming out?
Yeah, kind of.
Really? 14,000 people in a month?
It's Sally Wainwright, and
she's
huge. And already in Calderdale, we had Happy Valley.
Yes.
So already we were kind of preempted a little bit. We had Happy Valley, and then there was Last Tango in Halifax. So even from them, the interest was huge. We were already getting a lot more tourists coming, a lot more local involvement, in the local paper. Every other week there's something about Sally's work.
Right.
And then obviously with Gentleman Jack, knowing that it was going to be an 8-part series, and from the off, Sally was very confident that this was going to be several series. Yeah. And then the minute that it's Saran Jones, who's ridiculously popular, everything was kind of in place. So I think we were kind of, before they even started filming, we were having meetings to say, how do we deal with this? And again, the problem with historic buildings is you can't rebuild them. Yes. So we can't make it any bigger. We can't add or really improve we can't add a lift. There are always going to be restrictions, and where it's positioned, that they didn't have loads of visitors, so they didn't think to build a car park back in 1800s.
Right.
So we have to deal with these things and again do the best we can. So yes, so sometimes there have been some queues, but I think people are so keen to come, and I think people understand that we're a small site. Yes. And we're doing everything that we can. So
well, and that's part of the wonderful intimacy of it. Marlene Oliveira, are there plans to open Shibden's library in the future?
Well, the tower is available when we do private tours and when we do special events and things. It's just that it's up a really narrow, low-ceilinged spiral staircase. So we can only take a few people up at a time. So it can't legitimately just be open, because you'll end up with a bottleneck and troubles and people falling down the stairs and banging their heads. So, but we have shared it quite a lot. We've got it lots of photographs, and we have, we try and let people up when we can. But to be honest, Anne never sat and sort of, we kind of, it was finished just after she set off on travels. So she didn't sit up there and write the diaries, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a great addition to have. So come to one of the private tours.
So, we'll have to talk more about that. From Kendra Lawrence, what are some of the most interesting, unique, or your favorite objects in the Calderdale collection?
What do I like the most? Oh, well, I've recently been I like books. And I also really like photographs. So most recently, I've been going through our photography collection. I've just opened an exhibition at Bankfield, which will be open again when we reopen. We're going to extend it. And so on Bankfield's social media at the moment, we're sharing a lot of those photographs. And I always like to think that Anne would have loved these photos. And it's interesting, there was a photograph taken at the laying of the foundation stone for the museum. Now, she subscribed to that, but we don't think she went to the opening. If she had have done, we would have a photograph of her with Anne.
Wow.
So yeah, so I think photographs just kind of capture things, but the portraits I think are very important. I think and especially at Shibden, you know that Anne commissioned one of her aunt, and the big painting on the staircase, the landscape of Shibden Dale, that was her present to Marion, because Marion didn't want a portrait. So I think that kind of brings you close. And there's a couple of other portraits of various uncles. And we know that Anne got them reframed. So again, it's those bits that when you learn that she did that, they kind of bring you close to her. And then the writing desk, obviously.
Here's the problem with talking to you, Angela. I really have to let these people ask questions, because I could sit here and talk to you all afternoon.
We'll do an episode 2.
Yes. From Heather McLean, has X-ray equipment ever been used to look behind the walls to see if anything else is hidden?
No. Most things weren't really hidden. I mean, even the diaries, they weren't hidden. They were just, the paneling was done so that you could open it and there were shelves behind it. So they were never like hidden behind the paneling. They were just on the shelves that weren't in public view as such. So again, I always get, every now and again you might open something or look in a new box and you think, please find something with Anne's signature on, or but no, everything's pretty much been explored. And I think we have to have faith. The last resident, John Lister, he lived there for quite a long time, about 70 odd years. So he really did search the hall top to bottom and pull out anything that was interesting. And the archives, again, they weren't really hidden. They are all there, but they are now just in the archives waiting to be sort of looked through. So I don't think we're going to find anything revolutionary. But we shall see.
Just to touch on that, one of the points about using the guides is there's a couple of places in the sitting room and in the dining room where the walls, the guide will actually open the wall, and there's 2 objects that you see. There's the fireplace, and then there's the original plaster walls, right? I mean, you have to have a guide in order to see those.
Yeah, we can't just have people opening every other bit of paneling.
Right.
We have to be careful. I mean, our job primarily is to preserve this for the future. So if every single person opened the same door, eventually it wouldn't.
Yes.
So yes, there's a few sort of hidden bits and pieces, but again, we try and share all of these.
Angela is working, actually using her telephone as a hotspot, and she's back.
Sorry.
Hello.
I don't know what was that. It wasn't me.
No, it just went away. Here's a good question. This is from Honey Potter. Is Shibden haunted?
That's a very good question. Again, there's a whole other story about that. But I think because we're running out of time, the best thing to do is Very Gay, Very Ladylike do a podcast. And that was shared today. And we actually got talking about haunted stuff. And there's quite a good story on there that I shared with them. But it's a bit long to get into here.
Good. Well, that gives me a good excuse to give them a plug. Anybody that's listening, Very Gay and Very Ladylike does a podcast, and as Angela's telling us, there's a story in there about the haunting of Shibden Hall.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
They're fantastic because they're very concerned about the original Anne Lister and the real sort of the truth behind all the things that are happening at the moment. So yeah, highly recommend them.
All right.
And yeah, the story that actually came from Helena, so it's me telling Helena's story, but it's a bit long-winded, so listen to them.
Okay, great. Now, last but not least, and then I have a question, so I'm going to have to jump in here too. This is from Anonymous.
Okay.
How can people volunteer to participate in or contribute to Oh, contribute to research outside of the diary transcribing. Is there anything else people can either donate to or participate in surrounding Shibden Hall?
Yeah. I mean, if people find stuff out, I mean, please share with us. This week, I shared a resource list of all the things that we know. So again, if there's things I've missed off there or other theses or whatever, get in touch. You can send stuff to the hall, or to me at Bankfield, whichever is easier. So yeah, I'm interested to see what other people come up with. But obviously, we need sort of full sources and where things are from. So yeah, we are going to be doing more call outs, especially as I mentioned several times, Shibden 600th birthday, which also includes everything to do with Anne Lister. We will be calling out very soon for stories and information and people that have undertaken research. And we're going to try and collate all of that together to find a way to share it next year. So probably watch this space. I mean, feel free to send us stuff. I'll take a look. You can email collections@calderdale.gov.uk if there's something, and that's seen by me, and I'll have a look. But obviously, no, we are a small team and we only have so much time. I mean, I would love to just do a PhD now and follow all these leads because I keep hearing such interesting things. But yeah, I think for the hall, what we want to know is stuff that really directly relates to the hall and the people that live there, and things that we can use to enhance the stories that we tell. So yeah, feel free to send stuff through. But yeah, listen out as well. We will be asking for specific things. We'll be asking for people that have visited, what you think of the hall, your favourite things, research undertaken, what Shibden means to you, what Anne Lister means to you. So yeah, all of that we're going to be asking for over the coming months, ready for 2020 at Shibden, which should be hopefully open.
Right. So let me just jump to that. That's actually my final question for you, which is, we do know that the filming's been put off for Gentleman Jack. Obviously, we're going to ask that question of Sally later on this afternoon. Anne Lister birthday weekend 2021 has actually been moved to April 11th through the 18th because we can't use the Minster on Anne's actual birthday because her birthday falls on Easter Sunday this year. So we're going to be about a week and a half after her birthday. Do you think our visitors are going to be able to get into the hall while we're there during that week?
Oh yeah, I didn't see why not. Normally we open from 1st of March, so there's I don't know what might happen in the world. Yeah, I mean, by then we should be back up and running and as normal. The filming has been postponed, but again, even when we do the filming, we tend to shut for sort of a block of 6 or 8 weeks, and then we open for a bit and then we shut. But we can always look at the timings of that. And I'm pretty sure, Sally's at the helm, and she knows how important this is now for people. It's almost gone beyond what she's created.
Yes.
And there's a network of amazing people out there who want to celebrate and, not only Gentleman Jack, but also the real Anne Lister.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I'm pretty confident that that the production company and Sally would be keen for us to be open when we're most in demand. I mean, obviously, Shibden Hall, this is, putting Anne Lister and the hall on the world map. But also our primary motivation is to be open for people to actually visit. So we've got to weigh up between sort of filming and promotion and actually being open and then looking after the hall as well, because we also don't want everybody to turn up on one day.
Yes.
When actually, like next year, we should be open from the 1st of March till the end of October. So it's easier for us if the visits are spread out. Mm-hmm. But it's great that locally, again, you have the Victoria Theatre in Halifax and the Minster, these much bigger venues with more toilets and more car parking who can host these big events. And then for Shibden, what we'll probably do is more live broadcasting. So we might do more interviews on site, but broadcast them so that more people can see, because 35 people is not a lot. When in fact, there's tens of thousands of fans out there who want to come. So bear with us. We are quite small, and we're a small team as well.
Angela, I really thank you for being on with us today. And it's going to be a big year for Halifax next year. It's the 600th anniversary of Shibden Hall. It's Anne Lister's 230th birthday. And the Minster, I believe, is celebrating its 900th birthday next year. Yeah. So it's quite a year in Halifax. So, Angela, again, thank you so much for visiting us with us today. We are going to be leaving you here. I do hope that people will stay on for a minute. I'm going to talk about the next thing that's coming up. But Angela, thank you so much. And I really look forward to seeing you in the future. Okay. So to the folks that are still on, I did want to let you know that yes, we will be bringing live to you Sally Wainwright and Saran Jones. And believe me, I couldn't possibly be any more excited about all of this. And again, I did want, that happens at 6 p.m. British Standard Time and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States. So again, 6 p.m. There was a little bit of confusion about that in the beginning because we had put it down as 5 GMT, and of course, Great Britain has gone through its time change now. 6 p.m. British Standard, 1 p.m. US. And again, please keep your eye out. We will be announcing events, etc., for Ann Lister birthday weekend next year. So I will see you back here in an hour. And thanks so much for joining us. Also, I want to thank our team from Ann Lister Birthday Weekend, Jennifer Grant, Cheryl McDonald, and the wonderful Rachel Lappin that does all of our on-site work in Halifax. And then, of course, once again to Steph and Liv. So see you in an hour. Goodbye.